Welcome to another video. We're gonna see the process of obtaining good looking renderings within Keyshot. So for the case study, I'm gonna make use of the Panton Chair. I will also put the download link in the video description so you can also follow along. We're gonna make use of the chair within a step file format. So Keyshot will be able to import that in order to obtain great renders. Also, within the same case study, I'm going to show the model that is currently available on Vitra website. So as you can see on vitra.com for Panton Chair product, we're going to have this render that we are going to attempt to recreate. And also at the bottom, we're going to have the information regarding the colors and materials available for the chair, and also the CAD data. So within the CAD data, we're going to have various 3D file formats. I'm gonna download the FBX file format, and we're gonna see what are, let's say, the difference between this model and the one that I created and uploaded on GrabCAD. Now I have that model ready, so I'm gonna open that Panton Chair FBX. I see that the folder has also a 3 in parentheses. That means that I had downloaded this 3 times recently. So this is a chair available on their website. I'm gonna drag and drop that within Keyshot, and we're gonna see within the import settings, I'm gonna leave it as default. So over here we have the options for the scene to define a new model set. We can position some aspects regarding the model orientation. Keep in mind that Keyshot has the y-axis horizontal, and the x and z are for the plane. So depending on the software that the 3D model was created, you can also do it directly over here within the position, but I usually prefer to orientate the model afterwards when I see it within the scene. And we can also add some elements regarding the environment. We can also import cameras. In this case, within a step file, that camera information won't be visible, so we can leave that on or off. So for an FBX, we see that this is the file import settings. For others, like OBJ or step file, we're gonna see that this will be a little bit different. So I'm just gonna click on import, and we're gonna see that model loaded. And as you can see, within the FBX, there are some other elements that were brought in from that scene. I'm gonna expand this, and we're gonna see this will be the chair. And we're also gonna have some other materials over here. So I'm gonna select that, and I'm gonna hide that. So everything underneath 72 Vitra, we can just hide. And we're gonna have the chair only imported. We can also clear this geometry in something like Blender or 3ds Max, but that is not the case study within this video. So I'm just gonna have it hidden. Afterwards, I will go on the top parent element, which is the Panton Chair, and we're gonna see that we have this snap to ground. And as soon as I will click this, the whole model will not be snapped because the geometry over here will be all the way to the ground floor. So a workaround for this would be to select this section, so this one, press delete. We're gonna see, are you sure you want to delete the part? I'm gonna click yes, and now we're just gonna have the chair. And with the chair selected, if I will go now to snap to ground, now Keyshot has properly identified that this is the lowest part of the 3D model, and we have that snapped on the ground. Now, it is a good practice to always add a ground plane within Keyshot. That's why within the software we also have the possibility to add that directly over here. We also have a hotkey, so Ctrl+G will add a ground plane. This is really important because on the newly added ground plane, which also has geometry, the shadows will be better, so those will be well defined. Now, since we want to recreate the Panton Chair render from their website, I will do a print screen and I will use this as a reference. So I press the print screen and I will, let's say, select this area. I'm gonna have this save as. I'm gonna save it directly on the desktop. I will call this background. Now, with that object, I'm gonna drag and drop that image onto Keyshot. And as soon as I will drop this anywhere over here within the backplate, we're gonna see that even Keyshot at the top says set this as a backplate. So I will position this as a backplate. We're gonna see afterwards that we can have, let's say, shadow, specular, bump, or opacity. For this, we're gonna make use just as a simple backplate. So I will drag and drop that again, but since we added this ground plane, it's really important that we don't position that image onto the ground plane, because that what happened previously. So I'm gonna select that background and I'm gonna position it over here where I see from that orange outline all the way to the top. This will be the backplate. And now we're gonna have within our scene that backplate added. We also see that the aspect ratio within Keyshot has changed to match that photo. We can change the aspect ratio over here within the image for the presets. We see that now we have the resolution 1272 pixels for the horizontal axis, and for the horizontal axis we're gonna have only 458 pixels. For the final render, we're gonna adjust this in order to, let's say, create a smoother looking animation render. Okay, so now with the model added and the backplate added as well, if I'm gonna zoom in and zoom out using the mouse, I'm gonna see that I can make the model bigger or smaller. So I will want to have the model position over here to match those position within the backplate. That means I'm gonna go to the scene, I'm gonna select the Panton Chair, which is this one. Using the move tool, we're gonna see that we have both the translation and the rotation added. If you only want the translation, you can only activate that over here. And afterwards, I'm gonna drag this along the z-axis that we see over here with blue. This will be the x-axis, and I'm gonna try to match that. I can also rotate a little bit to change that perspective. And I'm gonna try to have this model position according to that. For the size, I see that this is a little bit small, so I can also define that I wanna add a fixed camera that I can always go back to within Keyshot. To do that, we can go onto camera. We see that by default we're only gonna have the free camera, but I'm gonna click over here, add a new camera, and I'm gonna call this match backplate. And now we see that this is with blue. That means this is the active view over here. Now I can also zoom in a little bit and afterwards position the chair a little bit better, but we're gonna see that only by zooming in and zooming out we're gonna actually let's say change the distance of the camera. We see that currently the camera is at a distance of 5.2 meters. If I'm gonna zoom in, we're gonna go all the way up to 5.8. So that's the distance from the camera to our scene. We can also slightly move this, so this will allow for a much better precise value. Afterwards I'm gonna position it a little bit like that, and I'm gonna add, let's say, 5.2. Let's go with 5. We see that the scale is well defined, so from the ground plane all the way to the top, but now the perspective is not that well defined and matched. We can use this match perspective, but in this case we can also just hold the left click mouse button and we can rotate the chair around like this. Now, one problem that we have with this model of the chair from their website is that it's not that accurate to the real object. As we can see over here, we don't have that matching curvature at the top. So even though I am positioning this according to that, we see that the chair within the render has this curve much more extended to the outside, while the model that we downloaded doesn't have that. And even though we can adjust the perspective and the focal length, we are still not gonna have that detail added. So just as a reference, I will also import the model that's available on GrabCAD that you can also download. So I will put a link within the description. This is the GrabCAD link to the Panton Chair. So this is a more accurate 3D model of the chair. I already have it downloaded over here. So the file will be this one. As we can see, step export, that's the name of the file. I'm gonna drag and drop this as well within the scene. And we're gonna see that for a step file, so this will be differently than the FBX file import. We're gonna have some other changes that we can do over here. So we can also adjust the orientation, but what is differently from FBX is this tab called geometry, where we can change the tessellation quality. So the tessellation is the mesh will be redefined and re-topologized, because the step file is a CAD model and the FBX is a polygonal model. So over here we can let's say increase this quality if we want to, but that will also add more geometry to our scene. For this case study, I will just leave it at 0.2. It's more than enough for the tessellation quality. As we're gonna see, the model will be quite detailed and it won't be boxy. So now I have both of those chairs within the viewport. I will select this Panton Chair export. If I will go to the move rotation, I have the possibility to drag this around. And I will also enable the rotation, and I will rotate this around the y-axis, so the green axis, in order to match that perspective of the chair over here positioned to the left. So let's see. This should be that. I'm gonna go now with translation, and I'm gonna have this moved over there. So I can also make use of this translation on the x-axis in order to position it over there. And afterwards on the z-axis, I can also go all the way over here. Now, if the scaling is not matched in this case, I can make this chair a little bit larger. So as you can see, this is the size of that chair. If I'm gonna go to camera and I will go directly to, let's say, left view or a front view, we're gonna see that those two chairs are quite differently in size. So the step chair has this height, and the other chair in FBX is way larger. Now, I will go back to that camera matching, and I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. And as we can see, this model that we added in step, the curvature is much more true to the real form of the chair. Therefore, I will hide the initial chair. We can also delete it, but I just wanted to show why it's important to use an accurate 3D model. So even though this FBX was available directly on their website, the model is not that let's say true to the real shape of the chair. So I'm just gonna hide the FBX one, and now we're gonna work with the Panton step export. I'm gonna move the camera a little bit like this. Afterwards, I'm gonna rotate this, and this is a pretty good match of that chair. Now, we can also use the color picker in order to extract that color. I'm gonna slightly move, and we're gonna see that the model also has a slight specular highlight. So I'm gonna go over here within the material. I'm gonna search for a paint color. And for this chair, I'm just gonna make use of the red gloss paint. So this will be the material. I'm gonna drag and drop this within the model. If you are using a newer version of Keyshot, you're gonna see that the materials will no longer be like this within a sphere. They will be inside a torus, but the functionality and everything is the same with this version, even though it's let's say a 4 years old version. But the render quality is really good within this, so that shouldn't be any problem. Now we have that material added to the chair. If you want to change the visual properties of that, we can right click, edit material, or we can go directly over here within the material and we're gonna see that paint gloss. I'm also gonna change the name of the material. So I'm gonna go edit material. We're gonna see that this will be paint gloss red. We can go back to their website and we can see, so that will be the color. If you're gonna go for the color and material, over here we're gonna see some, so this is pale rose considered. But over here we see that rose is has a different tone. We can also make use of color picker. So if I'm gonna go on the color, which is red, I can go on the color picker tool. And afterwards I can select where exactly I want that reference color. So we see that this is currently the RGB format, and we can match that. It's important that we can also match from other screens. For example, I have another screen to the left, and I can go over there and I can grab the colors as well. If you are only using one screen, you can also do the following. So we can make this a little bit smaller, have this positioned over here. As you can see, if I will try to make this even smaller, we won't be able. That's because we have the image resolution added over here. If I'm just gonna make this smaller, for example 600, just for a case study, we're gonna see that now we're gonna be able to have that resized. And with that resize, I'm gonna press the Windows button and the left arrow to have this Panton Chair swap to the other side. I see that the website is still loading. Let me refresh. And now within the Keyshot section, I can again edit material. I'm gonna call this chair 1, so that if we're gonna use the material for the second chair, we don't gonna have an overlap for the material name, and those won't be linked. And we can do the same within the color. I can go with the color picker, and just like I could have grabbed the color from the second screen, I can do that over here directly. So I'm gonna choose that color, and we're gonna see within the RGB system, that will be the color with that color picking, and we're gonna slightly adjust that to better match that photo. So I'm gonna make Keyshot again larger. I'm gonna increase the resolution like this, and within the material we're gonna slightly adjust this. I can go to the CS system over here, and as we can see, we're gonna have the possibility to add more brightness over here, so we can better match that. Or we can go for other systems, and we're gonna have the saturation and the value. So in this case, if I'm gonna increase the saturation, we're gonna see that this will be going towards orange, so I'm gonna make the saturation a little bit smaller. Okay, so something like this, we see that it's not the exact color, but keep in mind that color is something that is forming, let's say, within our eyes. But if I will go with a color picker and I will grab that color, we're gonna see that that difference. If you're also not familiar with color theory, I will also make some regarding that. So for now, I'm just gonna decrease the saturation for this one in order to have it like that. So I'm just gonna press cancel, and I'm gonna redo that, but over here by adding more lightness, more light to the material. Okay, I will leave the roughness like this because we want some specular. As we can see, we have some lighting over there. We're gonna change this within the environment if you want to, or we can just add a value, so we can go all the way from 0 to 1. If I'm gonna go all the way to 1, we're gonna have a matte color with no roughness elements, but if you're gonna go something like 0.1, we're gonna have some specular highlights on the model. Good, so this will be the original chair. I'm just gonna move it within the position to match that. So on the X, afterwards we're gonna have this slightly rotated, and I will also be within this match camera. Good. Now for the other chairs, I'm gonna right click on the existing model, I'm gonna go on duplicate, and with the duplicated model I'm just gonna move it and rotate it around the y-axis. So we can also add a specific value over here, something like 75, and afterwards, using the translation, I'm gonna go with this one over there. And as we can see on the z-axis, we need to go over here and afterwards only move it on the x. Okay, so we can also come with the model closer to the camera. So I'm gonna go for this. And now have that slightly translated. If you are not matching that perfectly, we can also decide to make that a little bit higher, so larger, but I'm just gonna go within the free camera because I don't want to change the scale of that. And within the free camera, we're gonna see how that will match. I'm gonna leave the initial perspective like that, so we just need to address the position on this on x-axis and afterwards move it a little bit. It's a little bit tricky if you want to match an exact backplate, as we can see over here. So a rapid change would be just to add a little bit of scale. So as you can see, for the chair we have 0.001. I'm just gonna add another one at the end, 0.8, and that will match that. Now for that chair I'm gonna use the red color. I'm gonna edit that. I'm gonna call the material to be chair 2. So edit this material. I'm gonna add chair 2. And I will slightly add a little bit of roughness, 0.03. So we still want some highlights. Now we can proceed with the other chairs. We can also duplicate this within a pattern, so we know that we still want 5 chairs. So I can duplicate all of them and afterwards only have them rotated. So let's do that approach in order to see making patterns within Keyshot. We're gonna see the axis will be X, so a total of 5 linear patterns. We're gonna also have the possibility to change the spacing, so I'm gonna change this to 0.5. I'm gonna go with even a lower one, so we're gonna have all the chairs within the viewport. I'm gonna press OK, and now we're gonna match those colors. So for the blue one, I'm gonna make this one the blue one. Edit material. So this will be chair 5. I'm gonna change that color. Again, we can use that picker, but keep in mind that afterwards you also have the environment, so that color picker will grab that exact same color value, but afterwards the final color will be influenced by the environment. So we should also address that over here within these values. So I'm gonna leave this somewhere like this. Now for the black chair, I'm gonna use the black paint matte, so this one with few highlights, as we can see. We're also gonna have the brown one. I'm gonna make use of, let's say, this material and only do a color picker for a similar color. So this will be chair 3. You can also use the naming regarding the color. I prefer for this case study to do the numbering. And now we can start to align those. So this will be the chair. It's always important that you don't just select the model over here. As we can see, this will only select this, but the model is also within a component, so you can, it's a good habit to always work with a higher element over here. So this is a child to that parent. So if I'm gonna rotate this will rotate those sub parts. And I'm gonna have this as well rotated and overlap to that chair. We're gonna go with the following one, which will be the blue chair, the black chair. And we see, since I only selected and moved it, a sketch that was used to define that remain over there. So that's why it's important to always check for this and have that model, the large parent, move so that there won't be any leftovers. Over here within Keyshot, if you have a lower spec computer and you want to not have that noise and recalculation of the final image, you can go to performance mode over here. As we can see, within performance mode, the scene will look like this. We don't gonna have those shadows anymore, but maybe we can work a little bit better like this. So I'm gonna move the chair to the back on that axis. Afterwards, within the rotation, I'm gonna go with something like minus 110, even more. So we now have minus 90. We can also adjust the rotation over here. If you're gonna press Ctrl click, you're gonna jump 10 degrees. If you're just gonna click once, you're gonna go with 1 degree. So keep that in mind. I'm just gonna rotate it to match with that, and afterwards we're gonna have the chair translated to the desired position. And as we can see, we're also gonna need to bring that a little bit like that. Just gonna add the translation. I'm gonna bring the chair a little bit closer, and afterwards with the rotation I'm gonna rotate the chair slightly. It's really difficult to do that within the viewport. That's why it's a good practice to use the sliders over here. Mainly if you have this like a camera match like we have with the back plate, it will be harder. And as you can see, we're gonna need to jump more degrees. So I'm just gonna try to match that. I'm gonna click once OK, and again I saw that I changed that. Always keep in mind to change the large parent. So minus 110, this should be better, minus 55. Okay, and now with the translation, I'm gonna move that somewhere over there within position. I'm gonna enable the performance mode because I like this better even though it's grainy. Now I'm gonna rotate this chair. Again, select over here. We're gonna see that we're gonna have to rotate it on this axis. And also our model has quite a lot of reflections. So select that, edit, roughness 0.05. We can even go with a higher value, 0.2. Move, translate, and have that as well move into position. So we see that this will be that position with that black chair to the back. And we only have two chairs to address. So one will be the white chair and the other will be that green chair. Okay, so that unlinked that model. But I'm going to select again, and afterwards I have the possibility to go to edit material, and I will just try to match that. So we see that this is quite dark, so I'm going to add some more light to the model over here. Okay, and now with the move tool, I'm going to move that within position. So since I have the camera within position, I will not move around the environment, so I will just drag the components to match that. Okay, so that's for that chair, and we also have the white chair that we are also gonna rotate. The rotation will be on this axis. I'm gonna press Ctrl and click, and now I will slightly just adjust it. Afterwards, have it drag into position, so on the Z axis. As you can see, the X axis, but in the other direction. And now just have it position over there. Okay, so this is snapped to the ground, even though the back plate is no longer oriented over here. When we are going to remove that back plate, and we're going to go to a clear white background, we're going to see how we're going to have that. So this is the free camera. I'm going to go to color. And as we can see, that red chair disappeared, because we don't have that red chair anymore. Let's see, so this will be the first chair. I'm just gonna duplicate and recreate that. Not sure exactly when that chair disappeared, but it's not a problem. That means that the overall rendering is so well defined that I didn't even notice that. Okay, and we're gonna have that color. And now if you are gonna remove that back plate, we're gonna have the chairs. The red one has a lot of highlights, so I'm gonna make it a little bit more matte, add a 0.2 value over there. Also within our reference, okay, so the one that I added a print screen, we see that we have a higher distance between those two. And also the model will have over there so a little bit of curvature. The model that I created is all the way to the bottom, so that's good to know, and I will also adjust that, but not now, within our following video. So I'm just gonna slightly position this chair a little bit over there. Okay, now within the reference we also have these reflections at the bottom. We can make use of a paint gloss material that we can position onto our ground plane over here. So have that moved over there. We're gonna see how those will appear. And we're also gonna have that gray area in the back. That is because our virtual environment is small, so we need to adjust that. Since we know that that's an environment problem, we're gonna go to the environment, and we have the size over here, so I'm just gonna increase this, so that will make the environment larger. But now I will also select the plane, and I will scale this in order to make it larger. And we see that the size from the environment, even though it's all the way over here up to 100 meters, we can go further, like 500, and we see that horizontal line is still black, so I'll go to 5000. Okay, and we have the ground shadows that we want to have those casted. For the environment, if I'm gonna go for the lighting, this will make use of the lighting environment over here. As you can see, for color, the plane will have that gray appearance, but within the lighting environment, everything will be within that gray. And we can also adjust the environment. We are currently using the startup environment that is by default loaded within Keyshot, but we can go to environment, and we're gonna have outdoor studio. So the default one is this one, startup. We can also add a little bit of brightness over here, so that will make everything more white, but that will also lose some of the details on the, for example, the white chair, since it will be merged with the background. So I will just position an environment like this. I can also increase the height. As we can see, with a height like this, the background will be gray, but I will make this environment to be at a height of, again, even though the slider is all the way over there, I can slightly increase that. So in this case, 0.5 will be the maximum value. If for the size we had the possibility to go further than that, for this height, 0.5 will be the highest, but now we're gonna have that white clear background. And what we also need to change is to make these reflections a little bit soften. So I'm gonna select the material for the ground plane, and I'm gonna slightly increase the roughness. Let's see, 0.05 will make it like this. So this is too much. 0.01, we're gonna have some slight elements over there within the reflection. We can even go something more, 0.03 for example. Now we can also match a little bit the perspective so that our ground plane will no longer be over there. So I can just select with the left click mouse button, and I'm gonna slightly incline the camera, so something like this, and now we're gonna have the same background gradient over the whole render. And we can put this to a render. If I'm gonna go to render, we're gonna see the output location. I usually prefer to use the following, so custom controls within the options. For samples, set to 16, so this is the amount of rays calculated per pixel to determine the final appearance. A larger value will create better looking renders, but I usually prefer to go for sample 16 ray bounces. So ray bounces, this is the maximum number of times that light is reflected and refracted within the scene. So it's currently set to 6. We can also have that increase, but 6 does a pretty good job. For the anti-aliasing, which is the smoothest quality of jagged pixels, I'm gonna add this to 3. And for the shadows, we're gonna see those shadows. Again, I'm gonna add a value of 3. If you're gonna check this reference, we see how those shadows will be casted within that render. If you want to change those shadows, we have the possibility to go to the environment, and we can use the rotation in order to rotate that HDRI environment. So as you can see, that will also change the shadows. Now the shadow will be casted like this, and we can again have those changed. We can also change the within the HDRI settings, we can add additional lighting pins over here, but we're gonna discuss this in a separate video because that's a whole different, let's say, video material. So this will be the final render. I will go to render 16:6 3:3 for the resolution. Now we have the aspect ratio over here that matches the print screen that I created on the website. We see this is the aspect ratio. I'm gonna make one render like this. I'm gonna add to queue this preset, but afterwards I will go within the image presets. I'm gonna change the aspect to be 16:9. We're gonna see that this will be then the new proportion for that. Again, within the camera, I'm gonna change this inclination a little bit, so in order to have that background all the way to the back. I'm gonna go to render again, and again add this to the queue. So this will create a queue for renders, and afterwards, when you are ready to do the final rendering, you can go to the queue and you can hit the process queue, and the software will take each of those. So this is the first one. This is the CPU rendering, which also makes the best looking renders in Keyshot. As you can see, depending on the cores that you are located over there, I added 10. I have a processor with 6 physical cores and 6 other cores. And we can specify how many cores you want to add. It's usually not a good idea to add everything because Keyshot eats a lot of resources. As we can see over here, I'm using the CPU usage for the viewport of the software only at 50%. So that means I can also have other software running at the same time, and it won't be laggy because Keyshot is really thirsty for processing power and will eat everything in order to allow real-time visualization that is not noisy within the viewport. So the final render is slowly building up. I will decide not to have this cropped and add it as a full video on YouTube for people that want to follow along and they want to learn rendering. I highly recommend that you use Keyshot. It's very intuitive and easy to use, but I will also recreate the same scene within Blender, which is open source and is also really powerful, but also within CATIA, since the vast majority of my viewers are CATIA users. So while this is also slowly rendering, I will also want to approach some different render styles, and I encourage you to do those. So these again are from their website. As you can see over here, this is circular pattern of the chair, which we can do very rapidly within Keyshot. And afterwards, we just need to assign the materials. And as we can see, the ground plane will be positioned over here, so the chair will be rotated. And something like this as well. I'm just gonna give you some tips and tricks of how you can position the model like this quickly. So we have that snap to ground, like the one that we use to move the imported chair, which also had that sphere around it that we deleted, and afterwards snap to ground went directly to the ground plane. But we also have snap to lowest object, and we can use that to have it match over there. So this is the first rendering. I'm gonna go to that folder as well. So over here, for the rendering folder, I will just use a quick access in order to access that. But now, as the computer is rendering, even File Explorer is not responding, so I'm gonna wait a little bit in order to have that. Okay, now I managed to make it working on the second screen, so this will be that rendering scene. over here within that rendering scene there are various renders already created. So this you saw in a previous video, and we also have this. So this is the render that was created now. As you can see, the render is quite sharp, even though it's a low resolution. So 1920 only by 692, so the newly one will be full HD. But this is more than decent as a render that you may want to add to a website or stuff like that. Another thing to mention regarding Keyshot CPU rendering, as you can see, the final image in this case will be created from the middle, and various squares will move. So each of those squares is a CPU. On the white area it will process really fast. Over here, since we don't have any shadows or geometry, it passes really fast. But over here at the bottom, since we have that reflection, it will stay a little bit longer. And the most rendering time will be where we have the 3D models over here. As we can see, those rectangles will stay a while on this. So for example that, and only after a few seconds we'll go to the following rectangle to finish the rendering process. We see the render progress at the top, so this is 50%. But since we had most geometry in the middle, now the rendering will move faster as we go further along. So we only have this chair over here and the white chair to be rendered. Otherwise it's mostly background, which will render really fast. As we can see, those two chairs are only the one that require to be rendered. Also keep in mind that the computer that I'm using is 10 years old. So on a new computer with a good i9 processor, this will take not minutes but seconds for the same settings. The white chair is fully rendered, and now we also have the one to the left, and now we see the progress. So it's moving really fast, 93, 100%, and we have the final render that we can also visualize over here. So this will be the final render. I will also add the final renders to the GrabCAD link of the chair. So over here I already have some, but I will add these new renders since they are much more, let's say, detailed. Okay, and now regarding the other renders that I encourage you to work with, I'm gonna clear a little bit the scene. So I'm gonna delete that chair, that FBX chair that we didn't use. I'm gonna also delete all those chairs. You can select them with Shift, afterwards press delete. And I'm gonna have this rotated, so 90 degrees on the Z-axis. I'm gonna go over here, minus 90, afterwards snap to the ground. And to match this, I will go to the top view. We can go over here to the camera, we can choose the top view, and now we're gonna see the environment. Since it's so large, we're gonna have to zoom into our scene. We can also right click on the model, so like this, right click, and we're gonna have the possibility to set camera target. This will also bring the camera over there. And we can also center and fit selection. In this case, we're gonna see that Keyshot will center that chair. So I'm just gonna slightly move a little bit back. And now with the chair selected, I'm gonna go to make pattern. I'm gonna go to circular pattern, and we see that, let's see, how many chairs did we have over there? So a total of 6. I'm gonna go add the count to 6. I'm gonna also move over here, and now we're gonna need to change the radius. So I'm gonna make this slightly smaller. So 0.5, the chairs shouldn't overlap, so with 0.5 they do, so I'm gonna go with 0.65. We see that shadows will be slowly generated over here, and that noise will be cleared, and we're gonna have the clear shadows in the viewport. So depending on the CPU usage over here. So if you want to, we can also have this rotated, but for our case study, for that reference, we won't use that. And afterwards, we just need to address the material. So it will be the same workflow. I'm not gonna discuss this over here, but you can do that matching, and afterwards we can go to render, add job. We can also slightly rotate this, but keep in mind that if you're gonna see the bottom of the chair, we're gonna have that sketch visible, so you can hide it over here. Or you can just copy that material as well by going to copy material, go over here and have the material paste over here for material, and we're gonna have paste material. And that will be the best solution, since that's just a surface fill within a CAD software. Again, we can fully change those. Afterwards, go to render, add job, and if you're gonna go to process queue, the rendering process should start. Keep in mind that if you're gonna change that, to add the material for this, so paste material, so that they are fully defined with the same. And for the final rendering that I encourage you to do is this one. We're gonna have one chair positioned normally. So I'm just gonna do a case study over here. I'm gonna duplicate this chair. I'm gonna move it over here. So on the z-axis, we're no longer gonna rotate this. So minus 90 will be this. Minus 180 will be the normal. I'm gonna go to the environment, and I'm gonna slightly increase to not have that small environment. If I'm gonna make this really small, you're gonna see that if I'm gonna zoom out, that will be that environment. So if you don't want that visualize over there, you can just increase that. I'm gonna snap this to the ground. And now for those chairs that will be positioned on top, you can just copy this chair by going to duplicate. Afterwards, have it translated on the y-axis in this case. And over here, we're gonna need to rotate it along the x. So all the way to 0 over here. But now we're also gonna have to rotate it on the other axis. So on the y-axis, let's have this rotated all the way to 0. And now, in order to position those, we have the possibility to snap to lowest object, and that will snap over there, as we can see. I'm gonna slightly move it and snap it again to the lowest. I'm gonna enable performance mode in order to match this better. I'm just gonna position it over here, snap to lowest, and if those two are clipping, as they are for me over here, I'm just gonna slightly move it on the y-axis. Okay, I will also undo that rotation that I did by mistake by dragging the mouse. And I encourage you that you will do a rendering regarding this perspective as well. Okay, so I see that this video is 54 minutes. So we are gonna stop here, but I hope that you find this interesting. I will position a similar video over here to the left, and I will position a subscribe button to the right. So thanks for watching, see you in the next video.